What you're about to hear sounds like it's straight out of a sci-fi movie, but I promise you, it's happening right now. We're talking about computers, built not from silicone, but from living human brain cells. This is the wild story of brains in a box.
You know, for years, the whole goal with AI has been to build an artificial general intelligence, an AGI. Basically, to make a machine think like a human brain. But a handful of scientists are now asking a much more radical question. Why go to all that trouble when you could just use the real thing?
But why would anyone even think about doing this? Well, to get it, you first need to understand the massive, kind of hidden problem at the very heart of modern AI. It has a truly insatiable appetite for energy.
And look, that's not some random critic yelling on the internet, that's the CEO of OpenAI himself. The race for more and more powerful AI is sparking a legitimate energy crisis. These data centers are just draining power grids, consuming incredible amounts of resources. The path we're on, it's just not sustainable. We need a breakthrough.
Okay, check this out, because this really puts that energy problem into perspective. On one side, you've got Frontier, one of the most powerful supercomputers on the planet. It costs $600 million, weighs more than 266 metric tons, and fills 74 massive server cabinets. And on the other side, the human brain. It weighs about a kilogram and runs on just 20 watts of power. That's less than a dim light bulb. The difference in efficiency isn't just big, it is absolutely staggering.
So if the brain is that incredibly efficient, what's the breakthrough everyone's looking for? Well, it's this completely radical idea of no longer trying to copy the brain, but building computers from actual brain cells. And that brings us to the core concept here, the biocomputer. It's not a machine that acts like a brain. It's a computer that uses real, living human neurons to do the math. The goal is to create a biological intelligence operating system, or as they're calling it, BIOS.
You gotta understand, this is a fundamental shift in how we're thinking about this. The goal isn't just artificial general intelligence anymore. The new frontier is synthetic biological intelligence, or SBI. The argument is kind of simple when you think about it. Why spend billions of dollars trying to build a brain from scratch when you can just, start with one? I know, it sounds completely nuts, like something from a movie. So how is it even possible? Let's break down the absolutely mind-bending process of how you actually create one of these things.
So let's tackle that question head-on. The journey from a simple human skin cell to a functioning network of neurons is, honestly, one of the most fascinating things happening in science today.
Okay, so this whole process takes about 4 months. It all starts with a simple blood or skin sample from a volunteer. Scientists then do this incredible thing where they reprogram those cells. They basically turn back their biological clock until they become what are called pluripotent stem cells. Think of them as master cells that can become any other cell in the body. From there, they're carefully guided to become brand new baby neurons. And then, for the final step, these neurons are placed onto a special chip that lets us talk to them using electricity.
And that last step, getting the neurons onto the chip, is a monumental engineering challenge. I mean, you can't just drop brain cells onto a circuit board. You have to build them a perfect home, a scaffold. The best analogy is like building a tiny high-tech city. You need the right structure, plumbing to deliver nutrients, and wiring for communication. Every single one of these factors, from the texture of the material to its electrical conductivity, has to be absolutely perfect just to keep the neurons alive and let them talk to each other.
All right, so we have living neurons on a chip. That's cool, but can they actually do anything useful? This is where the theory gets real, with an experiment that proved this crazy technology actually works. Everybody, meet DishBrain. This amazing thing was developed by a company called Cortical Labs. It's a cluster of about 800,000 human and mouse neurons, grown on one of those microelectrode chips. And by 2022, it had learned to do something that just blew everyone away. It learned to play Pong. So how in the world do you teach a dish of brain cells to play a video game? You give them a really simple choice. The neurons get electrical signals that tell them where the ball is. They can then fire their own signals to move the paddle. Now here's the trick. If they miss the ball, they get punished with 4 seconds of chaotic, unpredictable static. But if they hit the ball, they get rewarded with a short, predictable, orderly signal.
And this is the crucial part. The neurons started to change their own behavior. They actively worked to avoid the chaos and get more of that predictable, orderly pattern. In other words, they weren't just reacting. They were adapting. They were learning. This showed a core principle of pretty much all intelligence, the fundamental drive to make your world predictable.
Naturally, a breakthrough like this immediately opens up a whole can of worms, a bunch of profound and really complex questions. And maybe the biggest one of all is the question of consciousness itself.
So, to have a real discussion about the ethics, we have to talk about scale. A typical brain organoid, that's what these things are called, used in research today, has around 5 million neurons. And that sounds like a huge number until you see the context.
Because a full adult human brain has around 86 billion neurons. Yeah, that's billion with a B. The scale isn't even in the same ballpark. What scientists are creating in labs right now is a tiny, tiny fraction of the complexity of a complete brain.
But look, just because the scale is different doesn't make the ethical questions just disappear. As this technology gets more powerful, we are forced to stare down an almost impossible question. We don't even have a foolproof scientific test for consciousness in humans, so how could we ever hope to detect it in a dish?
Now, to be absolutely clear about this, we are nowhere near needing some kind of emergency shutdown button. Researchers in the field all stress that today's brain organoids are less complex than the brain of a mouse or even a fruit fly. This is still fundamental, super early stage lab work.
And that brings us right back to the fundamental choice we started with. As our need for computing power just keeps exploding, which path do we take? Do we stick with silicon and keep building bigger, more power-hungry machines to imitate a brain? Or do we embrace biology itself, harnessing its incredible efficiency while trying to navigate this profound, totally new ethical territory? That's the question we as a society now have to figure out.